Have you ever wanted to design or build your own boat? Well, this video is for you. Well, I've produced a video series that consists of over 11 hours of videotape broken into 23 episodes. And in those episodes, I go into great detail on each step of building your boat, that you can either sail or row. So let's get started with what I think are the 8 steps of building your own boat. Those 8 steps are first as a selection and the criteria you use in order to design your boat. Second is to actually design the boat, and this is where we take our ideas and make them a reality. The third is lofting, which is where you're laying out your boat full size. Fourth is building a strongback and molds in which to build the boat over. The fifth is planking the hull. 6 is finishing the hull with fiberglass paint and varnish. 7th is powering your boat, either it be a sailboat, a rowboat, or maybe you're going to put an outboard on it. And the third and final would be launching your boat. So let's get started talking about the criteria for the boat that you want to build. Stick around to the end of the video and I will be giving you a special offer how I will help you one-on-one building your boat. So let's get started with the selection and criteria of the boat that I'm building in this series. So this boat is a tender for a boat named Arabella. It is built by a fellow YouTuber, Steve Dennett, on his channel, Acorn to Arabella. So a tender is a boat that tends to a larger boat, either transporting people and supplies to and from the shore. Now, a lot of times people call these dinghies, and a dinghy is a tender or a small boat that is carried on top of the larger vessel or towed by the larger vessel. So with that knowledge, I had a criteria on how to design the small boat that became named Victoria. In selecting the criteria for your boat, you'll need to identify how you'll use the boat and its aesthetic or look. Some important questions to ask yourself is, what size of boat do I want? What's the LOA, which stands for length overall? And the beam, which is the widest part of the boat. What size of crew am I going to have? Is it just myself or maybe 1 or 2 other people? What types of propulsion? Do I want to row it, sail it, or have an outboard motor? Or do I want all 3? And finally, what style of a rowboat do I like? Perhaps it would be a classic Whitehall style boat with its wine glass transom. Or how about a simple skiff with its smooth sides and a flat bottom? Or maybe it's a double-ender with its familiar canoe shape. A dory is also a nice choice with its sweeping sheer and a flat bottom. Prams are always practical with the transom-like bow for easy transporting and storage. Or maybe you're just interested in a classic dinghy like Victoria. The design criteria for Victoria was set by Steve. And several of the things that he wanted was, first of all, it needed to be exactly 9 feet in length. And the reason for that is so that it would fit perfectly between the mast and the companionway. In addition to that, he wanted it to be a smooth hull and fiberglass so that it would be easy to clean. He also wanted to be able to have 1 to 3 people in the tender at one time. In addition to that, he wanted it to sail, row, and also be able to be outfitted with an outboard motor. So this criteria you can see in depth in episode 1, where Steve, I, and John Harris, who is a naval architect for Chesapeake Lightcraft, discussed the parameters for Victoria. Another requirement that Steve had was that since Arabella was designed by William Atkin, he wanted the dinghy to have an Atkins-inspired design to it. So after this criteria was set out, we were now able to set out and start designing our little dinghy. Now that we've determined the style of rowboat that we want to build, we can now move on to the design process. Now I was fortunate enough to have studied some yacht design under Paul Gartside, who is one of the premier naval architects for small watercraft in the country. And one of the things that Paul said at the beginning of the class was that first we need to identify a boat that fits the bill of what it is that we want to build. Now, by doing so, we have the general shape that we can look for, and also all of the hydrodynamics of a boat design so that it functions properly have been already figured out for us. As I had mentioned earlier, I'll be using the William Atkin design Faye as a starting off point for my tender. In episode 2, I show how we can take the line plan for our inspiration boat and change it to fit the needs for our new boat. Also in episode 2, I cover designing a boat with a half-hull model. And I think a half-hull model is probably one of the best ways to design a boat. In fact, Nathaniel Herenshoff, who is a famous yacht designer in the 20th century who built 6 America Cup Defenders, designed strictly from a half-hull model. Now, the great thing about a half-hull model is that you can really see the boat, look at it, turn it around in every which way you want. In the current issue of Wooden Boat Magazine, issue number 294, there's a great article about the overview of half-hull models and their importance in the design process. Now, this is the half-hull model for my little dinghy, Victoria. Now, this is actually the 3rd carving that I did before I got the exact design that I wanted. From this half-hull model, we'll be able to create a table of offsets and a line drawing, which takes us to the next step of lofting. Lofting is probably the most difficult concept for new boat builders. Simply put, it is the full-size laydown of the lines of a hull. We do this by using a table of offsets. In episode 3, I show how a table of offsets relates to a line plan, and demystifying it by showing how a table of offsets is created from a half-hull model. In episode 4, I show how we use our table of offsets to lay down a full-size drawing of the hull. And once we do that, we can then move on to building a strong back and setting up the molds. In episode 5, I create patterns from our lofted drawing. I then transfer them to cut out our station molds. These molds are then placed on a strongback, which is a frame to support the boat under construction. With the mold stations in place, we can see the form of the boat developing. We end with episode 9 by adding the stem and the transom. We can then move on to planking the hull. 2 basic planking choices: lapstrake, also known as clinker, or smooth. There are many ways to achieve a smooth hull. One of the easiest for beginners is strip planking with cedar strips. I demonstrate this method in episodes 12 and 13. Once the hull is planked and faired, we can move on to fiberglass and painting the hull. We begin the fiberglassing with laying out the glass cloth. I then show my favorite method for wetting out the cloth with resin. All of this and some more tips is covered in episode 15. We then move on to priming and painting. In episode 16, I show how to get a flawless finish on your hull. In addition, I show some tips on how to get a mirror-like finish with varnish. Once the hull is painted, it can be then flipped over. Work on the interior can be done with fiberglass and paint, just like the outside. Seats and gunnels can then be added to finish the boat. The most common way to power your boat is, of course, to row it. You may also be interested in sailing it, or both. In episode 21, I show how to make your own set of oars, from shaping to finishing. If you're also interested in sailing your vessel, in episode 20, I demonstrate on how to sew your own sails for your new craft. Sailing will require a rudder and a tiller, and I've got you covered in episode 17. And of course, an outboard is always an option. Here, Steve has chosen an electric outboard to get to and from the shore. So we conclude the video series with episode 23 with the launching of Victoria. Now, many of you have asked if you could get a set of plans for Victoria, and you can see some of them hanging up here behind me. So what I've decided to do is to make a special offer to anybody that joins my Patreon account at the captain level or above and subscribes at the yearly basis. Now, for those of you that are already members of my Patreon account, if you resubscribe on the yearly basis and you're at the captain level or above, you too will receive a set of study plans of Victoria. Now, the study plans will not only include the body plan and all the line drawings and the offsets, but it also will include a drawing of that retractable rudder that I had built. So thank you in advance for your subscription. Now, I had mentioned if you stick around to the end of the video, I would give you a special offer. And that special offer is how I can help you personally, one-on-one, build a boat of your dreams. And it can be whatever kind of boat that it is that you want to build. Now, I currently am helping about 23 other boat builders realize their dreams on building their own boat. And I do that in a course that I call Boat Building Boot Camp. And here's the link, and the link is also in the description. So basically what it is we meet once a week online, and I'm available 24/7 to answer any emails or also direct messages. The cost is one-time fee for life, and it is less than what you would spend for 1 week at the Wooden Boat School. So check out the link below, and you can find out more about the online class Boat Building Boot Camp. So I'll look forward to your application and chatting with you about your boat building dreams. Thanks for watching. Now, in the next episode, I'll be working on a new boat building project. So thanks ahead of time for your support, and remember, if you're going to make it beautiful.